I, Paul Roberts, OBE, I am the Chief Executive at the LGBT Consortium, registered charity number 1110550. I have worked in the LGBT plus sector since 2003. I was awarded an OBE for services to LGBT communities in recognition of my work regionally and nationally. I make this statement in support of the appeal by the Mermaids organisation against the decision of the Charity Commission to register LGB Alliance as a charity. I, like many of the consortium's members, was deeply concerned when the LGB Alliance was registered by the Commission.
Now, Ms. Harris, you gave a speech on the 18th of January 2020, and a transcript of that is found at page 887 in volume 2.
Sorry, which page was that?
887. And so, after the introductory paragraph, there's applause. Oh, there's applause. I said there's applause. And you said...
There's so much to say, and I know I've only got 10 minutes. I just want to say, first of all, a very broad point. It's less than 3 months since Bev and I got together a secret squirrel meeting in London by contacting anybody we thought was really stroppy on Twitter.
Now, that was a word Ms. Jackson said she, perhaps, wouldn't have used herself, but she understood what was meant. Now, when you say really stroppy on Twitter, what do you mean by that?
What I was referring by the word stroppy was that in those days it was quite frightening to say biological sex is real. It was quite frightening to stand up against a general view that anybody who stood up and objected to the directions that were being taken by Stonewall and others was transphobe, a bigot. It was a frightening environment on social media. What Bev and I were looking for was courage, and what we had to do took enormous courage. We had to stand up, knowing that we would be at the end of the most disgusting, abusive insults over and over again. So when I say I was looking for people who were stroppy, Mr. Gibbon, I meant people who could stand up against the hatred we have received on a daily basis. Ever since we formed what we believe to be a charity based on principles of love and freedom of expression.
So you and Ms. Jackson approached stroppy people, confrontational people, people perhaps you might say who were prepared to stand up and be counted.
Yes. I am Kate Harris of LGB Alliance. Penthouse, 152 to 160 City Road, London, EC1V. I shall say as follows. I am one of the 2 lesbian founders of LGB Alliance. We started LGB Alliance precisely because we both had a history of activism as lesbians, and we wanted to work with lesbians, gays and bisexuals, and straights and trans, anybody who would support us, to move forward in promoting those rights that we saw were disappearing. The trans community, some of those were the stroppy ones, they were part and parcel of our effort to develop this new organisation, which was going to be creative, which was going to be positive, which was going to be full of fact and reasoning and love. It has nothing to do with being anti-anything. What we were anti was an ideology that felt was destroying us as lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and posing a direct threat to children. We never, ever campaigned against the rights of trans people. We say very clearly that we stand for equality under the law. We always have and we always will. And you know, funnily enough, I have met more trans people since starting LGB Alliance than I ever have in my life. And I have every sympathy with what it's like to be a person who finds that you want to change your outward appearance. Some people change their bodies, and so on and so forth. And these people have become my friends. So to call us anti-trans, transphobic bigots, again, it's a misrepresentation. And I can only explain it by saying people didn't want to engage in the ideas that we're putting forward, so they called us names instead. And you may have seen lots and lots and lots of people are constantly called transphobic, transphobe, bigot. It often happens on social media. We only have to look at J.K. Rowling and the torrent of abuse she received for expressing ideas that are similar to ours. My father, he died when I was young. I grew up rather lonely, isolated child. I was different from other children, and this became clear when I was at primary school. My much-loved teacher, Mr. Higgins, used to begin PE lessons for our class of 40 by calling out, "Boys and Catherine Harris, over there." "Girls, over there." Off I went to play football and cricket, at which I excelled. I don't know what the girls did. I was considered boyish by others.
I believe that the facts stated in this witness statement are true. I understand that proceedings for contempt of court may be brought against anyone who makes or causes to be made a false statement. I make this statement in support of the appeal by Mermaids against the decision of the Charity Commission to register LGB Alliance as a charity. I, like many of the consortium's members, was deeply concerned when the LGB Alliance was registered by the Commission. I believe that LGB Alliance and its founders are and have always been exclusively concerned with promoting anti-transgender critical beliefs and pushing back against what they describe as the trans lobby, in part by turning mainstream public opinion against them. My view is that these activities do nothing to help LGBT people or anyone else, and they cause immeasurable harm to trans people. LGB Alliance is essentially harmful to other LGB charities and the causes that they seek to advance.
The dominant lesbian and gay rights charity in the UK over the past 20 years was Stonewall. Originally, I had been an active individual supporter. This meant giving a certain amount of money each month to Stonewall, taking part in fundraising events such as walks in New York and Brighton, fundraising dinners at the Savoy or the Dorchester, award evenings at the V&A and various other events. At my partner and my civil partnership, we asked guests to donate to Stonewall rather than giving us wedding presents. I was proud to be a Stonewall ambassador.
Also, I have been asked to comment on the effect of LGB Alliance's registration as a charity on the Mermaids organisation. I wish to emphasise that nothing in this passage should be taken as criticism of the Charities Commission. Charitable status is allowing LGB Alliance to increase its funding, expand its reach, and pursue its activities more effectively. Perhaps more significantly, charities are rightly held in high regard in the UK and are expected to comply with certain standards. Since obtaining it, LGB Alliance has used its charitable status to reassure people that its activities are acceptable and its views should be listened to. For example, in a section on its website addressing various myths, LGB Alliance writes, "We are a charity registered with the Charity Commission of England and Wales and would not be able to be registered if we were a hate group." And 6 months after the Commission's decision, LGB Alliance held its own conference at the prestigious QE2 Centre in Westminster. Following complaints, the QE2 Centre stated that it had only permitted LGB Alliance to attend because it was a government-registered charity. In short, LGB Alliance now seems to be using the Commission's decision as a rebuttal to any accusations that it has spread misinformation, that its tactics are unacceptable, or that it should not be listened to as an authority on LGBT issues.
I, Eileen Gallagher of LGB Alliance, Kemp House, London, shall say as follows. I am the Chair of Trustees at LGB Alliance. My background is in media, script writing and creative business. I was the Managing Director of London Weekend Television, and in 1999 I formed my own production company, Shed Media, floated out on the AIM stock market and finally sold it to Warner Brothers. It would have been very easy for me not to have taken a role with LGB Alliance. I don't need to be the chair of a charity to raise my profile or further my career. I don't need to make new business connections, and I certainly don't need to seek out the limelight. But I became involved because I simply could not stay quiet. Around 2019, I watched with great dismay the rise of a new homophobia that meant being lesbian, gay or bisexual, stating that same-sex attraction was real, came to be considered bigotry. Women like me were told that to reject a male-bodied person as a partner would be transphobic and unkind. Even worse, young boys and girls who don't fit into a rigidly masculine or feminine stereotype were being asked to consider whether they might actually have been born in the wrong body. I think that it's wrong to suggest to a child who may not conform to gender stereotypes that their body needs to be fixed in some way. I was a tree-climbing tomboy myself. I shudder to think how my gender non-conformity might be treated if I were a young teenager today. I wasn't one of the early fighters for LGB freedom like Bev Jackson and Kate Harris, but I certainly benefited from their benefits my entire life. It was true to say that until recently, the UK was one of the best places in the world to be gay, but it's become increasingly aggressive. And you can see it from, lesbians being arrested at Welsh Pride March for saying they're lesbians who only like female bodies. So actually, to say I'm a lesbian and I'm attracted to women's bodies, it's seen as bigoted. And it's really infected so many organisations to a point that I found really surprising and distressing. But that's what's happened.
I, Dr. Belinda Bell, Chair of Trustees of Mermaids, Tarn House, 77 High Street, Yeadon, Leeds, shall say as follows. I have been the Chair of Trustees at Mermaids, the appellant, since May 2019. My background is in social entrepreneurship and academia. I hold a professional doctorate by Public Works, a master's degree in community enterprise, and a bachelor's degree in social anthropology. I am a fellow of social innovation at Cambridge Business School at the University of Cambridge.
Thank you. Okay, I think you're CEO of Mermaids, aren't you?
No, I'm the chair.
Oh, chair. I beg your pardon. I'm terribly sorry. And when did you become chair?
Nearly 3 years ago.
And your main focus, Mermaids' main focus, you tell us, is on children who are affected by gender identity issues. Yes, right? And you, I think, well, the CAS report into gender services at Tavistock Clinic was published in February 2022. And you prepared your witness statement before that. Do you remember?
Yes.
Yes. And you didn't produce a supplementary one. No criticism at all. Absolutely no criticism. But I just want to... Well, I'm going to take you through this in a little depth, I think. Because Dr. Cass is quite critical about the way in which these matters are being addressed and about Gender Identity Development Services, isn't she?
Well, I think everybody involved in the sector has been deeply concerned about Tavistock's Gender Identity Development Services' inability to meet the needs of the service users. So, I mean, criticism, well, you could call it criticism in that it's been very difficult.
And at paragraph 6 of your statement, you talk about those children with gender identities that do not fall within a cisgender binary framework. And just so we were clear about what a cisgender binary framework is, that is a framework that perhaps is most easily recognisable as a binary biological framework, there being males and females. Have I understood that correctly?
Yes.
Yes, and for many people, gender identity is a very different thing. Is that right?
A different thing to what?
Sex. A biological male/female binary distinction.
Yes, well, so many people experience themselves in a physical body that is sexed in one way or another and a range of ways, and also, additionally, have a sense of gender identity.
Yes, so gender is something different from sex. I was hoping we could get to a yes.
Yes, yes.
And it's socially or culturally constructed.
Gender.
Yes, those within the binary framework, biological framework, males and females, girls and boys, a gender or a gender role, because culturally and socially we ascribe certain characteristics for males and females. Is that right?
Is that a question?
Yes. Is that right? Do you understand gender to be in that way?
Well, it's very complex, isn't it? I mean, that's, I guess what we're, exploring a bit in these days, but yes, it definitely would fit within my and our beliefs that gender is somewhat culturally and socially constructed as well.
It's not something we're born with. I don't come out of the womb and they say, well, you've got a vagina and you've got binary sex characteristics, and in there somewhere is a gender. It is something that's overlaid. That's not a criticism, and I think we all recognise it, but am I articulating it in the right way?
I should say at the outset, right, that I'm not transgender. It's quite hard for me to know how to articulate it. So our job really at the moment is to listen to children and understand what we can do to help if they're distressed. So if you're trying to ask if people come out of the womb with... Well, you see, I'm not clear they come out of the womb with a sex, to be honest.
Well, they come out of the womb with a penis or a vagina.
Yes, so if you want to reduce sex to penis or vagina...
Okay, we've discussed gender, we've discussed sex, perhaps got as far as we can, but let's look, please, at the CAS report. Now, that was a review commissioned by NHS England, yes? And it was into the Gender Identity Development Service, the GIDS clinic in the Tavistock. Is that right?
Yes.
And I'm going to spend a little of time with you on this, Dr. Bell, because, well, it's your field, if you like.
Look, so to be absolutely clear, I'm not a medical doctor.
No. No. Well, I say no, I beg your pardon. That's very... Well, I didn't know. But I'm not asking you medical questions.
No, so I am neither a medical doctor, and additionally, in a sense, right, the CAS review is not Mermaids' field. Mermaids does not do medical stuff. We don't give advice on medical stuff. No, this is not part of what we do, very explicitly.
You support children with gender identity issues, don't you?
Yes.
And some of those children, perhaps many, I don't know, but some of those children will go to Gender Identity Development Services, GIDS, and will start upon a medical pathway. You know that?
Yes, yes.
And some of the children that you support, that Mermaids support, will be or will have been referred to GIDS and will be on that medical pathway.
Yes.
And you will have no doubt Mermaids informed yourselves about what that medical pathway is, what gender dysphoria is, and how you can best then support the children and families of those going through that medical pathway.
Yes.
You contacted people with gender-critical views to form a confrontational institution. And that's demonstrated in some of the language used in the speech, isn't it?
No, I disagree. The organisation that Bev and I set up and discussed, thought, how can I put this? We had not a single clue what we were doing. We had not a single clue. We had no idea what would happen to us. When we spent all that time talking to people, what we were actually talking about was how do we protect children? When we got the reaction we got, it was 50% thank you from all around the world. We need you desperately. You're the only organisation in the world that's standing up and telling the truth. And then the 50% were telling us they were Ku Klux Klan bigots funded by right-wing fundamentalists. We didn't want confrontation. We wanted to be a charity that was looking to future. How can we best look after generations of children to come who, like us, grew up to be happy lesbians and gay? We existed from the timing of Alison Bailey's tweet. So we had no name, we had no written documents, we had no website. We weren't a company, we were an idea. Alison Bailey's tweet went viral about 11 p.m. that night.
Oh, so let's come to that tweet now. It came at 11:12 p.m. So presumably after the secret squirrel stroppy meeting has finished. This is the tweet from Alison Bailey. This is an historic moment for the lesbian, the gay, the bisexual movement. The LGB Alliance launched in London tonight, and we mean business.
Yes.
Spread the word. Gender extremism is about to meet its match. It's quite gladiatorial sounding.
Yes. Again, I think we need to think about context here. Many lesbians in particular, but also gay men, trans, straight people have felt under siege since 2015. We had felt completely abandoned by the government, by Stonewall, by media. So there was a feeling at that meeting of euphoria. We were happy to be together again. We were happy to be lesbian, gays, bisexual, trans, straight, saying don't be frightened. It's okay to say there are two sexes. It's okay to say to children, you can be anything you want. It's okay to say that we stand up and we won't be frightened. So if that was what gladiatorial actually, it was really good because it was and remains David and Goliath.
Oh, I'm not sure that gladiators are always David and Goliath.
No, you're quite right. We are a pinprick on an elephant in terms of funding. In terms of the situation in the world where gender identity ideology has been massively absorbed into the United Nations and the European Union, etc., etc.
That's not what I'm asking about. I'm saying there has been a 4,400% increase in the number of girls, that's children observed female at birth, being referred to GIDS, and that there are 3 times as many children, so female at birth, being referred to GIDS as people observed male at birth.
I am not an expert in this data.
No. If you don't, well, that's fine. If you don't have a reason to accept or not accept them, then you can just say you don't know. That's up to you.
Then I don't know.
Okay. But if they are right, those figures there, I mean, there doesn't there, seem to be an extraordinary sudden rise in same-sex attracted girls identifying as male and seeking medical pathways.
I don't know.
Now, gender-affirming care has a number of aspects, doesn't it? Let's go through them. A teenager who was given, I'm talking about medical care here. A teenager who is given puberty blockers essentially doesn't go through their puberty along with their peers whilst they are taking that medication. Agreed?
Yes.
And their body in that time remains pre-pubertal.
I am not an expert, but from my understanding, yes.
And, well, their genitals, they don't develop. I mean, I think we all know that.
Yes.
And then if you go into hormonal treatment, once they have reached 18 or once they're past 18, they start to develop some of the secondary sex characteristics of the opposite biological sex. So breast development, permanent hair growth, permanent voice deepening, that sort of thing, yes?
Yes, so I am not an expert.
No. I'm not suggesting you are a medical expert. But you are an LGBT rights campaigner, so I'm just putting the basic facts to you. If they go on to surgery after hormone treatment, that they may be, you know, they may have a mastectomy, a hysterectomy, removal of the penis and testicles, agreed?
Yes.
And those are obviously irreversible treatments, aren't they?
Yes.
Which cause ultimately sterilisation, don't they?
Again, I am not a medical expert.
Well, Mr. Roberts, if you have your penis or genitals removed... Yes, and then they can result in loss of sexual function, can't they? As far as you know.
As far as I know.
Yeah.
He ran a national conference in October 2021, attended by politicians from the left, right and centre. We ended the day by turning the event into a disco, with a DJ, dance floor, lighting. A trivial detail, you might think, but the absence of spaces where lesbian, gay and bisexual people can meet means there's no bookshops or cafes and very few bars catering for LGB people, and our community is becoming increasingly isolated. Astonishingly, London has a population of 9 million and now has just one small venue for lesbians. In the mid-noughties, there were, I think, at least a dozen lesbian bars in London, but now there's only one. They've been lost because although it used to be possible to have single-sex lesbian bars, it's now seen as transphobic. It's not the purpose of the LGB Alliance to rebuild the lesbian bar scene, but this is demonstrative of how aspects of LGB society have been lost, which is one of the catalysts for our foundation.
I, John Nicholson MP, of the House of Commons, London, SW1A 0AA, shall say as follows. I have been the Scottish National Party Member of Parliament for Ochil and South Perthshire since 2019. Before that, I was the MP for East Dunbartonshire between 2015 and 2017. I am the SNP Shadow Secretary of State for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, and a member of the House of Commons Digital Culture, Media and Sport Committee. I'm also Deputy Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Global GLBT plus rights. In Scotland, the governing Scottish National Party has, not without internal debate, adopted a progressive stance on trans rights. Our position has been summarised by our leader, Nicola Sturgeon, as an ardent, passionate feminist, and I have been all of my life. I don't see the greater recognition of transgender rights as a threat to me as a woman or my feminism. The Scottish Government has, in many ways, in my view, been ahead of the UK Government when it comes to these issues. Now, LGB Alliance repeatedly claims that the Gender Recognition Reform Bill, the GRR, would make it easier for trans women and men to access women's hospital wards, refuges, toilets, changing rooms and prisons. This is inaccurate and liable to mislead the public. LGB Alliance suggestion that the GRR bill would change the position of trans people in prison by allowing any trans woman to choose to share a cell with a woman, provided that her gender recognition certificate was also untrue. As set out in its 2014 guidance, which is currently being reviewed, the Scottish Prison Service will allocate trans women, with or without a GRC, to the Women's Estate. But if there is clear evidence that she as an individual may pose a sexual offence risk, then this should be dealt with as for any other person in custody posing such a risk. Only where risk assessment determines it is justified should she be subject to increased staff supervision or restrictions of her association with other people in custody.
I, Beverly Jackson, of LGB Alliance, Kemp House, 152 to 160, City Road, London, EC1V 2NX, shall say as follows. I am Beverly Jackson, co-founder and trustee of LGB Alliance. Kate Harris and I founded LGB Alliance in 2019. I have spent my life working as a teacher and translator and supporting diverse progressive causes, especially refugee rights. I have written a book about volunteering with refugees. I am proud to have been a founding member of the UK Gay Liberation Front, the GLF. At the London School of Economics, I was on the GLF steering committee at the age of 19, and I was the spokesperson at our first march at Highbury Fields in November 1970.
So this is an advertisement that was placed in the Scotsman in, I believe, March 2020, opposing the Gender Recognition Reform Bill. Now, looking at the headline, and I quote, "Self-ID gives predators the green light." Now, this is campaigning about the law, and in very emotive and inflammatory terms, isn't it?
Certainly emotive.
Yes. And
I can accept that it might be seen as inflammatory.
And looking through some of the details, well, just in terms of language, the first column, I quote, "Even a man who has been convicted of sexual offences against women and girls." Again, moving straight from the Gender Recognition Bill to people with sexual offences convictions. Now, that's part of the same combative and emotive approach to the subject, isn't it?
No, I don't agree. The point is that I think when any legislation is being introduced, one of the main points is supposed to be looking at any unintentional adverse consequences for other groups in society. And here, some are being singled out as adverse consequences for women and girls.
The advert refers to, quote, "He won't have to change his name or shave off his beard." It goes on in bold. "We believe it's a dangerously lax law that will be exploited by predatory men who pose a real threat to women and girls." Now, you were here when Mr. Nicholson gave his evidence, I believe.
Yes.
And I would put to you, I must put to you that it's ridiculous to suggest that somebody will go to the trouble of getting gender recognition with all that involves. And if criminals are criminals, this act isn't going to make any difference.
No! I entirely disagree. And those who are involved in criminal justice have pointed out that it is very naive, that there are, unfortunately, some predatory men in society, and they do, unfortunately, go to extraordinary lengths in order to perpetrate their offences by simply making a declaration. So, I think this is entirely legitimate.
Do you accept that this advert doesn't correctly represent the proposals, in that, as I put it now, again, describing it as simply making a declaration, well, it's far more than that, isn't it? What's proposed in the Scottish bill?
Very little is proposed beyond the making of a declaration and a 3-month waiting period.
Well, that's right, exactly. When the qualifications come, it becomes really something that's significantly more than simply a self-declaration. One has got to have lived in the acquired gender for at least 3 months and they have to confirm that they plan to do so permanently. That's correct, isn't it?
I believe self-declaration is what it says. It's self-declaration. And I believe it's entirely legitimate to point out that the very, very tiny minority of predatory men would be given license to pursue their aims in this way.
Malcolm Clark, one of LGB Alliance's co-foundations, also tweets about me quite often. Always in the context of my support for trans rights, and has, for example, called me frothing at the mouth, self-obsessed, a bloated ego, a serial fantasist, and an elephantine ego. He has accused me of idiocy and ignorance, and has said that brave feminists are constantly trolled, bullied and misrepresented by elected mediocrities and narcissists like me, and so on.
So let's just briefly go through it, if we may, yes?
Yes.
If you need to refresh your memory, do take a moment, because you seem to be distracting yourself.
No, I'm reading my notes in the same way you're reading your notes. It's useful to us both, I'm sure.
If you need to take a moment, you just take a moment.
Oh, you're very kind, but I'm fine. Please continue.
Well, I want to take you through it because I want you to explain to us where it is that you say LGB Alliance are aggressive.
Well, I mean, it's...
Now just listen to the questions. If it is necessary, you will be given the opportunity to say anything else you would like, but listen to the questions, focus on them and answer them. Please, Mr. Nicholson, okay?
Yes, but LGB Alliance have a complete package. Their package is online, their package is in consultations and newspaper advertisements. You cannot isolate one part of LGB Alliance activities and distract yourself from all the others.
Pause there, Mr. Nicholson. You have referred to this document in your witness statement, and I am asking you questions about
Well,
it.
let me give you a prime example.
No.
Well, do you want an answer or not?
Mr. Nicholson, Miss Munner, it is important that you do listen to the question, Mr. Nicholson.
Mr. Gibbon and Mr. Loveday, the legal representatives for Mermaids, are listening carefully. They will, no doubt, object to any inappropriate questions.
Now, do you know, and I don't know if you're aware, but let me just put it to you, do you know that of those children being referred to GIDS, in the case of boys, only 30% are straight, heterosexual, and in the case of girls, only 25% of them identifies as heterosexual. Did you know that?
I've read various figures, but of course trans people can identify as gay or lesbian in their acquired gender as well.
Well, they can. Well, let me put it more simply. Only 25% of females, girls, presenting to GIDS identify as heterosexual. That is, 75% are either lesbians or bi. They are attracted to members of the same sex, other girls. You understand that?
I know what a lesbian is.
Well, I take nothing for granted in this case.
Really?
So you understand what a lesbian is?
I'm vice chair of LGBT group in Parliament. You have to have a basic understanding. And as a gay man, you can believe me, I understand what homosexuality is.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear it. So, 75% of girls presenting to GIDS identify as lesbian or bi. And you can see, coupled with a 4,000% rise, why that's a proper matter of concern for LGB Alliance. a lesbian and gay and bisexual organisation. You can see that that's a proper matter for concern.
Well, I know this is their obsession. Yes, I do.
And it's a proper matter of concern for an organisation promoting the interests, dignity and human rights of lesbian, gay and bisexual people.
Oddly enough, I thought that the purpose of the Alliance was charitable work and that it was a charity. And I notice we're an hour into my evidence and we haven't discussed any charitable work that this organisation does, which I thought was the whole purpose of this hearing.
Can I take that as a yes or a no? That you agree or disagree that this is a proper matter for a lesbian, gay and bisexual charity to be concerned about?
I am aware that they are concerned about it.
I can only ask you the same question a number of times.
And I can only choose to answer in my own words.
So when you say about a trans gay man being included in a gay men's organisation, when you say somebody who identifies as a man, that covers, doesn't it, quite a wide range of people? And it's not about whether or not a person has gone through any medical transition, is it?
That's correct.
And it's right, isn't it, that many trans people don't go through any kind of medical transition at all?
Yes, that is correct, for many reasons.
Yes, and others take some medical stance like taking hormones, but they don't have any surgery.
Yes.
And we've discussed that it's not about whether the person has a gender recognition certificate either, because the vast majority of people don't who are trans, do they?
Yeah, that is correct.
So what it is about is self-identification.
Yes.
If somebody says they are a man, they are a man.
Yes.
Regardless of their physical or legal status?
Yes.
Because your belief is that trans men are men.
That's correct.
By that, you don't mean trans men should be treated as men. What you mean is they are literally men, yes?
Yeah, I'm saying that trans men are men and should be treated as men.
Yes, but you don't...
As are trans women are women and should be treated as women.
Fine, but you don't only mean they should be treated as men, you mean they are literally men and therefore should be treated as men, don't you?
I'm not sure that that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that trans men are men and should be recognised as men, so treated as men.
Right, recognised as men, so they are literally men. Well, it follows, doesn't it, from what you said, they are literally men. Well, it follows from what you were saying that they would be literally men?
There would be differences, but they should. But my understanding of the law is that a trans man is a man and should be treated as a man.
Well, what do you mean that there are differences? There are differences between trans men and men.
So a trans man might have ovaries, and therefore there would be some services that a trans man would need that a trans woman wouldn't need, and vice versa.
Right.
But I would still consider that my interpretation, my understanding of the Equality Act is that they are a man.
But you keep coming back to the Equality Act, and you've accepted that you don't have legal expertise in that. And so let's talk about it, not in a legal context, but in just like an everyday context. Your view doesn't now seem to be that a trans man is literally a man because you say there's a difference between trans men and
I believe that trans men are men and should be treated as men.
Right. And they are men even though there isn't any objective difference between them and women. Is that right?
Can you say that again?
Trans men are men even though there isn't any objective difference between them and women?
No, I would disagree.
Well, on what basis?
Well, so, look, I believe in self-identification. So if a trans man is a man, then they are living as a man and are recognised as a man.
Self-identification is a subjective state, isn't it? I mean, that's what you think about who you are.
Yes.
So it's not objective, is it?
Yes.
So there isn't any objective difference between a self-identifying trans man who has taken no medical steps and a woman?
I don't believe that it's as simple as that. It's a binary notion.
On your view, the only difference between people who are literally men and people who are literally women is their own subjective view of themselves, isn't it?
You keep using the word literally.
Actually? I mean, actually? Men, you know, people who are actually men. Okay, so Mr. Roberts, I'd like you please to go to paragraph 29B of your witness statement, which is on page 108 in bundle 1. You talk here about the phrase same-sex attraction, and you say, don't you, that it's a term that has fallen out of currency until LGB Alliance started to use it, and you describe it as an older language, yes?
Yes.
It's the language, isn't it, that organisations like Consortium and Stonewall used to describe LGB sexual orientation?
Well, I think there's always been a mix of use of both sex and gender language.
The rights of people who experience same-sex attraction was what Stonewall and Consortium advocated for until they added trans rights into the mix, isn't it?
Well, the original purpose was focus on sexual orientation, but that would have included trans people who are also LGB.
And used the phrase same-sex attraction. That was something that was in currency until recently. I think that follows from the witness statement.
Well, that would have been the language we would have used.
You say in this paragraph that the phrase same-sex attraction was never meant to be exclusionary.
Correct.
But it is by its nature exclusionary, isn't it? Because it excludes sexual partners of the opposite sex.
No, I disagree. That it was intended ever to be exclusionary.
Well, the term itself identifies attraction only to people of the same sex and not people of the other sex, unless you were talking about bisexuals. Excludes. It is about same-sex attraction excluding opposite-sex attraction, isn't it?
The difficulty with that is that it's prescribing that this binary notion of sex and gender, which I disagree with.
You no longer advocate, do you, for the rights of people who have same-sex attraction to live free and open lives?
We absolutely advocate for LGBT people as much as we do for trans.
You condemn the sort of advocacy that uses the phrase same-sex attraction as bigotry, don't you?
I repeat that we advocate for LGBT people as much as we do to trans people.
What you advocate for now is the rights of people who are attracted to others of the same gender. That's the phrasing that's now used, isn't it?
We are advocating for all LGBT people, yes.
This is a list of LGBTQ+ terms from Stonewall's website. Presumably you endorse that glossary?
Oh, I've seen this glossary.
Okay. At page 1367, it defines homosexual. Can you see that there?
Yes, I can see that, yes.
And it says, quote, this might be considered a more medical term used to describe someone who has a romantic or a sexual orientation towards someone of the same gender.
Well, that's correct. That's what's here.
Okay. Now we're going to have to understand what is meant by that. According to Stonewall on page 1366, the page before,
I do, yes. Yeah.
we have a definition of gender there. Do you see that?
Yes, I do, yes.
Okay. It says, quote, it's often expressed in terms of masculinity and femininity. Gender is largely culturally determined, as is assumed from the sex assigned at birth.
Yes, I can see that, yes.
Do you agree with that?
Yes.
So gender is to do with masculinity and femininity, and I suppose everything in between, that's not binary, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's culturally determined, and it's assumed from a person's sex then, that must mean that gender is not innate. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't believe that it's as binary as it's likely to be made out, that sex and gender are inextricably linked.
I'm not sure. Oh, I'm not sure that I understood the answer, but I don't think it was an answer to my question. The question is this. If gender is culturally determined, largely culturally determined, then that would indicate that it is not innate to an individual. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
So, for instance, masculinity is not inherent in being male. A man could be feminine in his behaviour or in his interests or how he presents himself, couldn't he?
Yes.
And a woman could be masculine.
Yes.
And that is a very familiar phenomenon amongst gay people in particular, isn't it?
I think every individual is different.
Yes, every individual is different, but it is a very familiar amongst gay people to come across people who are gender non-conforming, men who are quite feminine and women who are traditionally masculine. We could all agree with that, couldn't we?
I think to an extent that's stereotyping our
Right, but
community.
nonetheless, it's true.
To an extent.
But everyone is different. You have said everyone is different, and I think we can agree on that. But on this definition, looking back at the definition, which we agreed was everything in between masculinity and femininity, it could be hard, wouldn't it, to find any two people who have the same gender, given that everybody is different.
I'm not... Can you say that again?
Well, we agree. Look at the definition. It says it's about masculinity and femininity, culturally determined. We agree that it was from everything in between. You suggested that everybody was different, which I agreed with. I said, in that light, it would be hard to find any two people who have the same agenda if everybody is different.
I'm not sure I would agree with you.
Okay, I want you to look at the Stonewall definition of homosexuality that we've already looked at. We've already looked at?
Yes.
Okay, which was the same gender attraction, and then we've looked at the definition of gender. The message seems to be, doesn't it, that being gay, homosexual, is about being sexually attracted to people who are in the same place on the culturally determined masculinity, femininity spectrum as you.
No, I disagree.
Well, that's the two definitions taken together. Say it, isn't it? That's what they say. They say that being gay is about being sexually attracted to somebody who is at the same place on that spectrum as you are.
I would disagree.
Regardless of their biological sex.
I disagree with you.
Well, perhaps, maybe, you could propose an alternative interpretation of those two definitions and how they work together.
I don't believe we live in such a binary way, and that sex and gender are inextricably linked, as we have agreed that everybody is different. Everybody would be in a different place. That doesn't mean that two people who are at different places can't be attracted to each other.
Well, I never suggested that they couldn't. I'm looking at the definition of homosexuality, which quite clearly says is an attraction to somebody of the same gender. Now, you agree that everybody's gender is different, but it's a spectrum.
Yes.
It's not about binary anything. Can you propose an alternative interpretation of the definition that we have in this document?
I'm not sure that it's my place to come up with definitions. Again, I don't believe that we live in such a clear-cut binary world.
Mr. Roberts, is it different? Is it different to being attracted to people of the same gender and being attracted to people of the same sex? Those are two completely different things, aren't they?
No, it depends on individual people.
We are not talking about individual people, Mr. Roberts. We are talking about the principle and the definitions of gay, lesbian, bi, straight, and so on. I am going to put it to you one last time. Being attracted to people of the same gender is a different thing. Qualitatively different thing to being attracted to people of the same sex, isn't it?
I would disagree with you because I don't believe we live in such a clear-cut binary way.
I'm sure you'll accept that there are lesbian couples who have one partner is butch and the other is femme. That's quite common, isn't it?
I disagree with you that that's quite common. I think that's stereotyping again.
And one of the other areas where single-sex services are common are areas where women are nude, like naked, got no clothes on whatsoever. Women-only changing rooms in swimming pools, for example. Yes, yes? You understand that, don't you?
Well, it's not hard to understand.
And that's a women-only space because women will not want men in that space. Yes, you understand that.
Some women are not bothered by it. I mean, I've spent plenty of time in Scandinavia where they're unworried about these things. The Netherlands as well. Yes, I appreciate, of course, that lots of women do not want to be naked in front of them in a public space.
And you understand and respect that, do you?
I will always, under all circumstances, express and respect people's rights to privacy and to be themselves respectful.
And you can understand, can you, that women might be concerned, including lesbians, might be concerned that if a predatory man can just declare themselves a woman, they will be able to access spaces where women don't have any clothes on.
You see, there you go again. You're onto predatory again. It's designed to scaremonger and cause alarm.
Do you respect the views of that minority or majority, small number, large number of women who say, I am worried that if a man can self-declare that they're a woman, that a predatory man might do that and come into a space where I am naked?
As a Democrat, I always respect the minority views. But one thing that concerns me about the LGB Alliance's campaign is it is designed to increase fear and trepidation, to stir up unwarranted concerns and to frighten people.
Yes. Yes, we do use it, the term ideology, because I think it's hard to understand unless you're involved in this world. But one of the reasons we use ideology is that it's crept very much like Japanese knotwood throughout the schools, throughout universities, throughout the media. So much so that, you know, even the BBC sometimes will report saying things like, a woman is imprisoned for murdering her ex-wife in New York yesterday, and it's a man. So when I say it's an ideology, I mean that it's had an overwhelming influence on the way the public is misinformed about the reality of what's going on day to day in the world. And adults are able to work through that. Where we are most concerned is that the children are lied to.
Oh, you are convinced, aren't you, that the correct view is your view?
I'm convinced that it was necessary for us to raise our perspective on this. Our perspective has been confirmed massively since we began 3 years ago, when we were the only voice saying this. Now we have seen changes in the NHS, changes in the language that's used to draft bills in Parliament, and we've seen the CAS review. We've seen people sitting up. And I should add, we've seen a lot of parents now raising concerns, saying, what's going on at school? What are our children being taught? Why am I not allowed to see the curriculum?
And you used the phrase, children are lied to.
Lied to, yes.
So your accusation is straightforward. It is an attack on people who take a different view to you.
It is a suggestion that they enter into a new phase of working.
Ah, now there's a significant difference, isn't there, between the phrase new phase of working and lied to. Lying is deliberate falsehood.
It's deliberate because they believe in it. They actually believe that such a thing as gender identity exists, which is why I am so pleased that one of the leaders of the movement has now said, uh-oh, maybe we need to take another look at that. You know, loads of people believe this. This is what is so terrifying. I don't know if anybody remembers the South Sea bubble in the sort of 17th century, when everyone went crackers and bought shares in the South Sea bubble and then all went bankrupt. It's a similar kind of madness. I really cannot emphasise how many people who are intelligent, thoughtful, sensitive, caring people seem to have lost their minds on this particular issue. I think what may have happened is a lot of people have overcorrected. So it is a massive number of people with the best will in the world who are just falling for a myth.
Can I just, to give you an opportunity to clarify one thing. I asked about lied to, and I said deliberately false, and your answer seemed to be that it was deliberate and that it was what they believed. Now, it can't be a lie if it's what they believe, is it?
Can't it?
Well, so you say you're happy to engage in debate by accusing people who have different beliefs of lying.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't start by saying, you're lying. I would start by saying, can we have a look at the evidence about this social phenomenon that is sweeping around the world of young people, particularly young girls, who are going on a medical pathway having double mastectomies. Sometimes they're on special offer in America, 2 for the price of 1. It's an incredible global phenomenon, and I think it's well worth looking at. And I think a charity like LGBT Consortium or Stonewall or Mermaids, I would just ask, why does this not bother you? There may be, and the Cass report has said this, young people for whom transition will be the best possible outcome. But that is based on a full medical assessment, a psychological assessment, months and possibly years of work. And we don't say that that is not possible. What we say is, do not tell children a lie. Do not say you can be born in the wrong body. And so if I was starting a conversation with Mermaids or Stonewall, as I tried to do, as I mentioned yesterday, it would be about how we have to look at the evidence, not the ideology, not what you believe, not what we believe, but can we look at the evidence?
And what LGB Alliance says here, and this is a tweet dated the 5th of May 2020, I quote, "Many groups and programmes are involved in the gender propaganda, targeting children, Stonewall, Mermaids, etc. There is profound homophobia at the heart of gender identity theory." Now, that's a straight attack, a straight attempt to undermine Mermaids, isn't it? And it's in emotive and confrontational language. It's gender propaganda.
It is a statement full of feeling. And feeling behind it is love for children, who may be confused into thinking that they are trans, and what is going to be seen in future decades as one of the most wicked medical scandals ever to hit this country. So it is challenging, and we are challenging it. This is a life and death discussion. This is the most serious issue I've ever been involved in my life as a lesbian. I find it terrifying and staggering in its size and influence and proportion. I believe that it is our duty to challenge harm where we see it being promoted. On the other hand, I see Mermaids have every right to exist as a charity. We can criticise them. They can criticise us. That is the nature of living in a pluralist society.
And on page 1152, bottom half of the page, Malcolm Clark, a director and trustee of LGB Alliance, tweeted, "Yet LGBT Foundation reserves its sympathy not for the victims, many of them gay, but for the monsters of Mermaid. Cut their funding." Now, are those your views? Are these views you agree with?
I agree with the emotion that's conveyed in that tweet. Malcolm knows some of the young women who have detransitioned personally, and I can emphasise with the level of emotion that is expressed in that tweet. The damage that has been done to so many young women in particular, and young boys, is a scandal. It's horrifying, and it does raise huge amounts of anger.
But
when we see these people talk about the fact that their lives have been ruined, they have no sexual feeling, they are infertile, they may have beard growth for the rest of their life, even though they are female, they'll have male patterns of balding. These people's lives have been destroyed. So I emphasise with the level of anger and emotion that Malcolm is expressing. And it's making the same points as much more dramatic in an emotional way, which I can understand given his personal relationship with individuals whose lives have been destroyed. They are trying to rebuild those lives. I believe that is not only a personal tragedy for them, but could become an unfolding global medical scandal. It's impossible. It's impossible to see how this will play out. It is possible that those who fear that we will see the most medical scandal since thalidomide in the next decade, they will be proved right. If that is the case, some people are likely to end up in the criminal justice system and possibly in prison.
The Times investigation. Staff spoken to. Whistleblowers, yes? You can see the headline. "It feels like conversion therapy for gay children, say clinicians." Lots of gay people turning up as trans and asserting that they are in the, well, if not in the wrong body, that they are of the opposite gender or sex or however one expresses it. If you look at the first 3 paragraphs, it will give you a flavour.
Yes, I'm familiar with this. I mean, I have to say this is a Times investigation.
Yes, of course. And they spoke to a number of clinical staff, and that's what they discovered from them. That's what they've learned from them. And it's not at all problematic to be troubled by that, is it?
To be troubled by?
Well, the fact there appears to be clinicians in GIDS who are saying, we are being presented with a lot of gay children and they appear to be moving on to the trans pathway because they are gay, not because...
They're trans?
Yes. Conversion therapy for gay children.
So, clearly, anybody would be very concerned if that was what was going on. I mean, I have to say, I do not put much worth by a newspaper investigation. And I'd also just like to point out again that this expression, transing away the gay, is deeply offensive because it speaks to praying away the gay. And it's a horribly homophobic idea. And I can't imagine what we're doing in 2022 considering aligning this. It makes me feel very uncomfortable.
And I don't know if you know, do you know this, but the largest proportion of girls and boys presenting to GIDS are sexually attracted to people of their own sex. Lesbians, gay boys.
Yes. Though I do know this. I think, right, okay, so two things. I'll just add again. Mermaids is a children's organisation and we deal with kids and gender. And so sexuality, as I think you replied again with, is not our main focus. So I'm not in any sense an expert on sexuality, but what I would say, because I think you're going to point out the concern that lesbian or gay children may be transitioning and then no longer lesbian and gay, but in my witness statement, I made reference to the quite significant data set which shows that only 9% of transition people are straight.
Well, starting at the other end, if you like. The story that young lesbians may be finding it easier to opt for transition than to live as non-gender confirming girls, living in a society that attributes certain characteristics to them that they don't have.
So the suggestion that young girls would be finding transition easier than XYZ was frankly close to being laughable. I mean, transition is a very serious, extremely difficult thing to go through and to access in terms of, well, we're talking here about GIDS. So even proposing a sentence in that way misunderstands the experience of trans girls and boys.
Gender distress is a very, very serious issue, isn't it? It causes great harm to young children sometimes.
Sometimes. But we should be clear, not everybody.
No. And a lesbian girl or a lesbian struggling with gender because she is a gender non-conforming girl.
By which you mean lesbian. That's what you mean.
You're gender non-conforming. She dresses like a boy and is a lesbian, sexually attracted to other girls. Might find that very distressing if she's a gender non-conforming girl, a lesbian that dresses like a boy. And she might think it would be easier to be a boy than be a girl who doesn't conform to those gender norms, wear girls' clothes and be sexually attracted to boys.
I disagree that that would be a plausible thing.
Looking at the Gender Identity Development Services, GIDS. CAS is examining those and the first bullet point, quote, from the point of entry to GIDS, there appears to be a predominantly affirmative, non-exploratory approach often driven by child and parent expectations and the extent of social transition that has developed due to delay. An affirmative, non-exploratory approach. That is it acknowledging the account of gender dysphoria without examining it, analysing it, or testing it? And a second bullet point,
yes.
There doesn't appear to be a standardised approach to assessment or progression. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And then, quote, there is little evidence of mental health or neurodevelopment assessments being routinely documented.
Yes, well, as I referred to earlier, I don't think anyone was under any illusions that the GIDS was functioning adequately for the needs of these children.
They are valid concerns.
Yes, the system is not functioning.
Yes, and there are cohorts of children, lesbians, gay boys, and mainly girls who are presenting as trans, and we don't quite understand why, and that's a worry as well, isn't it?
I don't agree that that's necessarily a worry that we don't understand. There's a lot in the world I don't understand.
We don't know how many children, including those who have had physical interventions, desist, experience regret, or detransition. Do we?
Well, as Dr. Cass says, the data is limited. I mean, it's not that there's no data, but it's a difficult field to explore.
Okay, well, let's come back to the next subject, just briefly. The Cass review is, quote, not able to provide definitive advice on the use of puberty blockers and feminizing and masculinizing hormones at this stage due to the gaps in the evidence base. I'm seeking to get through you, if you like, whether or not LGB Alliance's concerns about puberty blockers, the cohort of children that are presenting as trans, the treatment pathways that they may be locked into, whether those concerns have an evidential basis, whether they, therefore, might be reasonable.
There are two things. Now, I'm not sure you can ascertain through me whether or not LGB Alliance's concerns would have an evidential basis. I don't think I can do that for you. But I do want to just make the point that you've twice, in the last little while, used the expression medical pathways they might be locked into. And I should push back on that. My understanding on this matter is fairly clear that children take puberty blockers to block puberty, the clue's in the name, and they can subsequently come off the puberty blockers and puberty will restart. So the vast majority of kids, the data shows, that have puberty blockers and do go on to transition.
Well, I only ask you about that because we can see that was precisely Dr. Cass's concern, that children might get locked into a treatment pathway. Her report stated, quote, the most difficult question is whether puberty blockers do indeed provide valuable time, as you were suggesting, or to consider their options, or whether they effectively lock in children and young people to a treatment pathway which culminates in progression to feminizing, masculinizing hormones. So you see that concern. You are aware of that.
Yes, exactly. And this is what I think. I didn't actually realise that paragraph was there. And as I say, it goes on to demonstrate that the vast majority of young people who do go on puberty blockers do go on to sex hormone treatment, which implies that they were correctly diagnosed or helped medically in the first place. And as Cass says, this is the difficult question that she is seeking to answer, right?
Well, I think perhaps I haven't put it clear enough.
Okay.
The fact that a child goes on to cross-sex hormones, Dr. Cass is worried about this. It's not because they were properly diagnosed as being trans and needing puberty blockers, but because they have found themselves locked into a treatment pathway. Do you understand that?
Now, Paul Roberts seemed to have so little interest in lesbians, and in particular in the phenomenon that we've seen 4,400% increase in girls who think they may be trans. I felt an indifference from him about social phenomenon that surely should be of primary concern to someone running an LGBT consortium. There is a contempt in this ideology that ignores women. It ignores lesbians. And the reason that we formed LGB Alliance was because we were not prepared to see lesbians erased.
Mr. Roberts, you complain here in your statement about a tweet that was posted by, I think, Miss Beverly Jackson or somebody from the LGB Alliance, where it says that lesbians were being kicked off dating sites for saying that they are only interested in biological women, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember earlier on we discussed the competing definitions of homosexuality as same gender or same sex attraction?
Yes, I do.
Okay. If it's in your view that homosexuality is same-sex attraction, then a dating site that includes people with male bodies is not a lesbian dating site, is it?
You
would accept, I know it's not your view, but you would...
I disagree. It depends on complex definitions. Your terminology of a female body and a male...
Oh, I see. Well, we'll go back a little bit, shall we? If you have a view that there are two sexes, male and female, and that homosexuality is attraction to the same sex out of one of those two, then a dating site that includes people with male bodies is not a lesbian dating site, is it?
I would disagree.
Why?
Because a trans woman who is attracted to other women would still be a lesbian.
Right, well, I'm not sure that you've quite grasped the hypothetical, but, you know, that I put to you, but let's plough on. If as a lesbian on a lesbian dating app, you are told by the people who are running the site that you cannot specify that you want to only meet people of the same sex, meaning women with female bodies, then that is a dating site which is denying you a service because of your sexual orientation, isn't it?
No, I don't. These services not being lesbian rule.
Okay, I'll put it this way. If you go on a lesbian dating site and you were told that you can't specify that you only want to meet women who have female bodies, then you were being denied a service because of your sexual orientation, aren't you? If you believe that only women with female bodies can be lesbians.
I believe that the service is taking a decision on how I would interpret the Equality Act and access to service.
Right. Can you understand that a lesbian might experience it as offensive to be told by a lesbian dating site that she cannot exclude people with male bodies?
Again, I think it has... Well, I have to say, I go back to the... Well, if that site was saying that women, lesbian women, can access that service and a trans woman identifies as a lesbian, then they can rightfully access that service. And it would be for those individuals accessing that service to determine who they would and would not meet.
I'll say it again. If a lesbian determines that who she will not meet is a male person with a male body, that is not a good reason to kick her off a site.
That's for that individual to decide. That's what they don't wish to do.
Right, so if it's not a good reason, I mean, is it a good reason to kick her off the site?
I go back. If it's a service for lesbian women, then if a trans woman identifies as a lesbian, then that trans woman should be able to use that service.
Right.
Because they identify as a lesbian.
Right, okay. You are not focusing on the question, Mr. Roberts. We are talking about reasons for kicking people off the dating site. The woman, a lesbian woman, is kicked off a dating site for asserting that she is only interested in people with female bodies. Is that, in your view, acceptable?
Well, if it's not... Well, I have to say... I go back to my answer again, because it's not as easy as the question you're asking. Because if the service terms of that app are saying that it's for lesbian women and a trans woman who identifies as a lesbian wishes to access that service, they should rightfully be able to access that service.
We are not talking about whether trans women can access it. We are talking about whether lesbians can assert their own boundaries and boundaries which are same-sex based. And I think I'm understanding you to say no, they can't, or have I got that wrong?
I am saying that if somebody identifies as a lesbian, they will be able to access that service.
But not if she wants to say that she is the same sex, attracted, and doesn't want to meet people with penises.
That's entirely up to individuals on who they will and won't meet. And well, the dating apps are used to having a conversation with people prior to meeting.
It's quite clear, isn't it, Mr. Roberts, that a situation like this sort of thing raises a conflict between the inclusiveness that you advocate for and the rights of LGB people not to suffer discrimination because of their sexual orientation.
I disagree.
This point, which is about your wider complaint is about LGB Alliance's concerns that lesbians are being coerced into sex with trans women, isn't it?
Yes.
The context in which you complain about that tweet, and you say that that is an invented problem. You say in the third line, LGB Alliance frequently argues against an invented mass demand for trans women to be universally accepted as sexual partners, yes?
Yes.
That this is a BBC article. I'll read part of the article. Quote, Stonewall is the largest LGBT organisation in the UK and Europe. I asked the charity about these issues, but it was unable to provide anyone for interview. However, in a statement, the chief executive, Nancy Kelly, likened not wanting to date trans people to not wanting to date people of colour, fat people or disabled people. Yes?
Well, that's what's written here, yes.
And she went on to say, quote, sexuality is personal and something which is unique to each of us. There is no right way to be a lesbian and only we can know who we are attracted to. And she goes on to say, nobody should ever be pressured into dating or date anyone they are not attracted to. But if you find that when dating, you are writing off entire groups of people, like people of colour, fat people, disabled people, or trans people, then it is worth considering how societal prejudices may have shaped your attractions. Yes?
Yes, I can see that.
So, she is comparing quite clearly there being a lesbian, i.e. same-sex attracted woman, with being racist, disablist, or fattest, isn't she?
Well, I can see what you're saying, yes.
Yes. Notoriously, as I'm sure you will know the term, there was a workshop called Overcoming the Cotton Ceiling, Breaking Down Sexual Barriers for Queer Trans Women, which is referred to under the picture. She said the workshop explored the ways in which ideologies of transphobia and transmisogyny impact sexual desires.
Yes, I can see that.
I mean, whichever way you cut it, this is about how to get lesbians to have sex with male-bodied people, isn't it?
I would disagree with that.
At the top of that page in the BBC article, Dr. Ivy said, quote, I think the main concern that people have in regards to dating a trans person is that they won't have the genitals that they expect because we associate penises with men and vaginas with women. Some people think that they could never date a trans woman with a vagina or a trans woman with a penis, but I think that people are more than their genitals. I think you can feel an attraction to someone without knowing what's between their legs. So, she says you're reducing people just to their genitals if you exclude people from your dating pool on that basis. Do you agree with that?
Well, I can see that's written there.
But do you agree with it?
I agree that people will be attracted to who they're attracted to and that will differ for every single person.
So is it that, like, you don't agree that it's a transphobic to have what's called a genital preference?
Well, I think everybody will have their own levels of attraction to different people, and there will be a whole entire spectrum of that.
Okay, I'd like you to focus on the question, Mr. Roberts. Do you think, okay, I'll put it to you an easier way, hopefully to answer. Do you think it is transphobic to have a genital preference?
I think people will be attracted to who they are attracted to. And if somebody is attracted to somebody with the same genitals, then that's absolutely fine. And if they're not, if they're attracted to somebody who identifies in a different way, then that is equally fine, and it will depend on the individual.
Right, it's not about the individual times when somebody is attracted to another individual person. It's about the people drawing boundaries around their sexual orientation or around their sexuality. Do you think it's transphobic to say, I will not have sex with people with penises?
I think that's somewhat oversimplifying things.
Well, there are lots of lesbians, aren't there, who would not regard that as a simplification, but more as a statement of fact.
Look, again, no person should be forced or coerced into having sexual activity with someone they wouldn't want to.
Right.
But if a cisgender lesbian didn't wish to have sexual relations with a trans lesbian woman, then that, well, you know, there would be no expectation on either side for that to happen.
I'm asking for your interpretation of what she said.
I think we also have to be super careful about the media outlets where certain articles are being written from and the media environment in which we are when it comes to trans issues.
Are you suggesting that this isn't true? That Nancy Kelly didn't say these things?
No, I'm not suggesting that at all, but I'm just saying that I'm not Nancy Kelly. And I can't speak for Nancy Kelly. On what
But
she is
your
writing.
interpretation is what I'm asking for, not for you to speak for her. It looks, doesn't it, as though she is endorsing the idea that lesbians need to unlearn their sexual boundaries. You don't think that it's homophobic to say women, lesbians, that they should unlearn their sexual orientation? You don't think that's homophobic?
I don't believe that. I don't believe that's what's being
I mean,
said.
it's like isn't it, in the old days, when lesbians used to be told that they just hadn't met the right man yet, and other less savoury suggestions. That's what it's like, isn't it?
I disagree.
As an LGBT organisation consortium, you should be worrying, shouldn't you, that there is evidence of lesbians being put under pressure to drop their sexual boundaries.
Look, anybody who is coerced or forced into having sex with somebody else...
No. You are not answering my question, Mr. Roberts. I'll put it to you again. You should be worried that there is evidence of lesbians being put under pressure to drop their sexual boundaries. Isn't that right?
Well, I think anybody would be worried if that was...
Yes, but you're not.
Well, I have.
I mean, you're not even curious about it, are you? You've dismissed it in your witness statement, out of hand, as utterly false at paragraph 29C. I mean, we can go to it.
Oh, no, certainly.
It's on page 110. Please do.
Yes, but again...
No, please.
I think we have to be careful where these media articles are coming from and the angles that they're taking. And again, no one person, any person that I know of in our sector is stating that any other person should be coerced or forced into having any sexual activity with any other person they do not wish to.
But I have taken you to evidence that lesbians are being told that having a genital preference is transphobic, and that individual lesbians are being coerced into having sex with trans women. That's in the article. There's even rape in there.
Again, this is an article that is written by a journalist from a media outlet that, well, you know, we just have to be careful of who is writing this material. I think this is taking information from some people, and my experience across our membership of organisations working with women, this would not correlate with the experiences they are telling us.
Well, perhaps that's because the only organisations that you allow into your consortium are those that you already agree with. Do you think that might be right?
I absolutely disagree.
Somebody has to stand up for these lesbians who are being told that they have a genital preference that they need to unlearn, and it might as well be the LGB Alliance, mightn't it? If it's not going to be any of your 525 members. The truth is that what you have surrounded yourself with in consortium is an echo chamber, isn't it? You have no diversity at all.
I absolutely disagree that we are in an echo chamber. We are a sector that is incredibly diverse, incredibly intersectional, is really progressive and seen as a sector that works well together with others. And I am incredibly proud to be the chief executive of one of those organisations.
I had initially hoped that what we were doing would be seen as a positive contribution to society. The toll has been heavy. The debate, sadly, has become vitriolic. So much so at times that I've been very concerned for my personal safety. There was a time when each time I opened my front door, I was wondering whether I would be attacked. My level of fear has receded over the last 12 months, but the first 18 months I was constantly worried about the safety of myself and my family. Several times I have thought I would die. This was purely a result of the daily onslaught of insults, lies, and the work needed to try to keep LGB Alliance alive. My health today is poor, and I attribute that to pressure and stress. I had no need to do this work, and my only intentions on taking it on were positive, to help other LGB people, especially young lesbians whose lives could be ruined by gender identity theory. There needs to be a debate in this area, and there needs to be a voice at a charitable service provider for those who believe, as I do, that sex is immutable. We have also done our best against incredible odds and the most virulent abuse imaginable to stay cheerful and full of love. We want to demonstrate to young people that being LGB is great. We want to spread the message there is no need to worry. Same-sex attraction has a wonderful history and an even better future. But that means women loving women, men loving men, and bisexual people loving either. Love brings us together, and the hatred directed at us by those groups and individuals who are trying to destroy us will eventually disappear in a puff of smoke. I am proud of what we have achieved. I could not stand by having had a happy and fulfilling life as a lesbian, surrounded by other happy LGB people, without restating that homosexuality, being a lesbian, means being attracted to a person of the same sex.
But other people will have a different understanding of sexual orientation and a different understanding of lesbian. Yes? You've seen Mr. Roberts, I believe, give evidence as to his understanding of words.
You mean that a lesbian can be a man with a penis?
Well, obviously that's not a phrase that Mr. Roberts will have used, but a different definition.
Is everything all right, Miss Harris?
Madam, I...
Could you get Miss Harris a tissue and a glass of water? Miss Harris, are you all right to continue?
Yes, thank you.
Not at all. Make sure you have some water if you need it there. Mr. Gibbon.
Miss Harris, I apologise if I inadvertently...
No, it's fine.
Raised something that was upsetting.
It's fine.
If I could just put the question. You'd accept that other people use words such as sexual orientation in a different way to the way you do, or lesbian for that matter, and Mr. Roberts I give as an example.
So yes, Mr. Gibbon, there are people who say they are lesbians. There always have been. Men. When I was growing up, there were fellow students in pubs, boys, men. I feel like I'm a lesbian inside. That has always been part of the jocularity. Lesbians are often a laughingstock. That leads on to children like me. And I'm afraid I do have a very specific personal interest in this. I was put in the boys section at school for sport, so I was pretty lonely. So I declare a personal interest in this because if I was 12 today, this is what I would be doing as a direct result of Stonewall law being promoted around the country. Today, I would have been taught in relationship and sex education that we all have a gender identity. That I had a gender identity that was differed from the sex I was assigned at birth. And my still developing brain would have believed that. And it's more likely that a well-meaning teacher who had attended training in LGBTQIA+ matters would have taken me to one side and talked to me about why I might be different. And I am certain I would have jumped at the special attention and the explanation as to why I might be different from other girls. I am 100% sure if a teacher had taken me to one side and said, Catherine, you know, some people maybe have a gender identity. Maybe you're really a boy. I am 100% sure I would have jumped at that special attention. I might have fallen for the line that, in fact, I was a boy, but born in the wrong body. I would have pushed GIDS, fast-tracked me onto puberty blockers. I would have insisted on hormone treatment, wearing a binder so I couldn't breathe, and no doubt I would have ended up having surgery. I might have pushed for surgery with all the damage that I consider could have followed, such as the loss of sexual function, sterility, osteoporosis, stunted growth, facial hair, male patterns of balding, increased likelihood of cancer, and all the damage that we do not yet know about. The long-term effects are still unclear. In fact, I was a lesbian and I have been allowed to grow up and become a happy lesbian. I believe many of the girls today who are much like I was may be getting the message that they may have been born in the wrong body. My good friend Alison Bailey said last year, the word lesbian is taken. I am going to speak for millions of lesbians around the world who are lesbians because we love other women. We will not have any man with a penis tell us he is a lesbian because he feels like it. The word lesbian is taken by us. We will not have that stolen from us. We will not be a laughingstock. We will not be erased.